Welcome back, everybody. So glad you could join us. I hope you were able to grab a bite to eat at lunchtime. Thank you to everybody who joined us for the previous session commemorating the transfer award winners. Really appreciate all the comments that you guys put into the chat. You guys have been doing an excellent job so far, keeping us engaged and asking questions for us. And so we've got 3 sessions here this afternoon that I think you'll find provides a lot of information and will be of interest to many different people. So I'm going to introduce our next session. This session is called Course Delivery Preferences, Student Surveys, and Institutional Responses. The Delivery Preferences and Institutional Response Dashboard was created by the Community Health and Social Innovation Hub at the University of the Fraser Valley. They go by CHASI for short. And it was done in collaboration with BC CAT. And the dashboard synthesizes available literature and institutional surveys on student modality preferences into a multi-jurisdictional repository, providing easy access to 41 reports with around 100,000 student respondents across 21 Canadian organizations. And it also includes a literature review as well as a thematic analysis. So this project highlights some of the varied experience students experienced or had during and also post COVID-19. And it can be used by post-secondary professionals to enhance their understanding of post-secondary students' course delivery preferences. We have 3 presenters here who are joining us today to tell you about this work. Chelsea Klassen, who is the lead researcher at UFV, Allie, MacKay, who is a student research assistant at UFV, and Mara Penner, who is the graphic designer who put together a lot of the slides for this presentation. Just as a quick reminder, we do have them all standing by, so please make sure you put your comments and questions into the chat, and we will relay them to our presenters once the presentation is done. So we'll pass it over to our recording, and then we will take it from there.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, Mike. So we're here today from the University of the Fraser Valley, and in particular, the Community Health and Social Innovation Hub. We're excited to speak to you today about course delivery preferences, student surveys, and institutional responses. So my name is Chelsea Klassen, and I'm the lead researcher at CHASI, and I'm joined by Allie, MacKay, who is a student research assistant, and Mara Penner, who is a graphic designer. So we'd like to start off our presentation by acknowledging the land that the University of the Fraser Valley is on. And so the University of the Fraser Valley is situated in the traditional territory of the Stolo peoples. The Stolo have an intrinsic relationship with what they refer to as Solo Tamak, our sacred land. And therefore, we express our gratitude and respect for the honor of living and working in this territory.
So I'm just going to give a little bit of an introduction to the Community Health and Social Innovation Hub, or the CHASI Hub, where the 3 of us are coming from. So CHASI is a community research center, so all our projects come to us from the community's ideas and needs. And we're comprised of 2 teams, the research team and the knowledge mobilization team, that work together closely to make sure that a project is being disseminated as efficiently and effectively as possible and having the maximum impact in the community. And at the center of all of our work is students, so they're involved in the process from beginning to end. And we've had the pleasure with working with BC CAT on 3 projects to date. So our first one was back in 2022 when I myself was a student. And so we did a project similar to the one that we're going to show you today, resulted in a dashboard, but that one was specifically looking at the impact of COVID-19 on post-secondary students. And then our project we're sharing with you today, which is about course delivery preferences, also culminating in a dashboard. And that one was completed at the beginning of 2025 this year. And then currently on the go, we also have another project that's looking at students transferring accommodations when they're transferring between universities. And that one will be wrapping up in 2026. And I will pass you over to Allie.
Thank you, Mara. As Chelsea mentioned, my name is Allie, and I'm the student research assistant on this project. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the scope and purpose of the dashboard. The scope was multi-jurisdictional with a focus on students in Canada. Our purpose was to investigate the instructional modes and student preferences on instructional modalities across Canada. Our research was done in 3 interrelated sections: data collection, literature review, and thematic analysis. Data collection involved emailing all post-secondary educations and scanning publicly for availability of reports related to student modality preferences in Canada. Over 41 reports were tabulated and key themes were extracted. These are presented in the thematic analysis section of the dashboard. Furthermore, a robust literature review was performed, and this revealed multiple explanations for student mobility preferences we had discovered during our data collection. This provided a comprehensive understanding of key factors that can also influence student modality choices. Lastly, data collection in all sections highlighted institutional strengths and barriers that impacted the availability of modalities in post-secondary institutions. Next, Chelsea will discuss the themes found in our literature review.
So our literature review really started with that overarching focus on some recent changes in the instructional modes. Obviously, 2020 brought an unprecedented pivot to emergency online learning, which really, creates this context that all of this instructional modality research we were looking at was focused in. And then finally, moving out of COVID-19 into a post-pandemic landscape, educators, administrators, and students were all forced to grapple with what remote learning, online learning, and different types of learning modalities look like coming out of the pandemic. When we think about some of the key factors in what students prefer from a modality, the first one we want to highlight is that students do enjoy the conveniences of asynchronous classes. It can allow them to fit their education into amongst their other commitments they might have. And subsequently, students factored the amount of travel time into course modality decisions. So this could be due to where they're located or what types of access they have to different post-secondary institutions. Another important factor is having an in-person presence. So students do really value having this experience on campus and subsequently connected positive experiences on campus and with education and campus involvement. Unfortunately, students did in the literature discuss how online courses have a negative impact on motivation and self-regulation. And finally, different demographic factors influence what modality preference a student might have. So that may look like something that's influenced by an age, an employment status, or something like having dependents to care for. And I'll hand it over to Allie.
Thank you, Chelsea. One of the interesting we found while reviewing all the data was there was a variance in terms used to describe different learning modalities between post-secondary institutions across Canada and in the US. This lack of consensus on mobility terms actually led to organizations to investigate common terms used by post-secondary institutions both in Canada and the US. And they created what you see on the screen right now, which is the modes of learning spectrum of terms. The standardization of terms for modalities is one way to reduce student confusion and increase comfort when they transfer between post-secondary institutions in BC. Standardization of terms may also help improve the categorization of student modality preferences in future research projects. In the next section, we're going to go over some of the key themes found in the survey results. The data speaks about the trends in student learning modality preferences, changes in modality preferences, and the experience of post-secondary students post-COVID-19. It represents diverse populations and considers how post-secondary education has adjusted to the changes in virtual education environments. Data from 21 different organizations represents close to 100,000 post-secondary students' thoughts on mobility preferences across Canada. Our first few slides consider how post-secondary education institutions are facing and meeting various challenges on mobility demands. On the slide, we can see that 5 out of every 10 students surveyed in 2021 from UBC Okanagan reported that instructors showed some discomfort with digital technologies, a figure that only decreased 1% when asked again in 2022. Furthermore, the Canadian Digital Research Association asked instructors to rate their peers at their institution and whether or not they have the skills and know-how to teach effectively using different digital modalities. Only 12% of faculty respondents believed all or most instructors were competent with multi-access technologies, while 39% felt some faculty could use these tools effectively. This highlights that different modes of instruction can be challenging, and it can take some time to adapt to the new changes post-COVID-19. And institutions have made strides in addressing course availability and student preferences since COVID-19. However, individual institutions' ability to be flexible and adaptive was often influenced by many external factors, such as institutional decisions, faculty preferences, staffing issues, collective agreements, space constraints, and the capacity to be able to offer online programming. As online systems continue to evolve, 85% of the 2024 respondents of the Canadian Digital Learning Research Association predicted that the AI adoption will further impact post-secondary education in the future, and this can influence modalities as we move forward. As institutions felt the impacts of technological barriers, so did students. Low-income and rural students disproportionately reported difficulties accessing reliable internet or having adequate devices. And although access to reliable internet has increased since the beginning of the pandemic, in 2022, 23% of UBC Vancouver students still reported lacking reliable internet access. Between 2021 and 2022, UBC Okanagan students reported improvements with technology familiarity, increasing 11%. However, 20% of students still reported unfamiliarity. These points highlight that online education reaches more people, but there's still people that are being left behind and work that needs to be done. And the next thing we're going to explore is student experiences. The pandemic disrupted social connections in academic settings, and this highlighted some of the broader systematic challenges related to online modalities. In 2020, 65% of students at Mount Royal University reported concerns about their ability to socialize as a result of the online learning environment. This highlights that course delivery models should integrate opportunities for interaction and collaboration to rebuild these communities, enhance the overall learning experience for students. And while students' overall satisfaction with overall learning modalities has improved, students still show the greatest satisfaction receiving in-person course delivery. However, it's important to note, as you can see on the slide, hybrid models gain significant traction across institutions as a preferred solution. Hybrid learning combines the flexibility of online learning with the engagement of in-person instruction and may give students flexibility and social collection both in one modality. Next, Chelsea will discuss student performance.
Thank you so much, Allie. So when we look at the theme of student performance, it was interesting to see that at UNBC, 51% of students were surprised that they were performing well in class, or sorry, that that is still possible in an online learning environment. So again, we could see those connections to motivation and that, students were surprised that performing well was still possible online. And when we think about the value of an in-person experience, we can look at this statistic from York University where STEM students perform 15% higher than non-STEM peers in blended courses, but they did express that dissatisfaction due to lack of practical components. So there's that connection between wanting to be on campus and have that experience, as well as, perhaps thinking about employability or the opportunity to have that more tactile components and how that might be connected. When we think about student focus and motivation, if we recall, motivation in an online environment, as we see, almost 80% of students feel less motivated. That has proven to be a challenge, not only at the University of Toronto, where this stat is from, but we saw that in other universities across Canada. On the other hand, at UBC Vancouver, we see that low motivation has been decreasing from 8 in 10 students in 2021 to 7 in 10 students. But still, we can see that's a fairly significant proportion of students who have low motivation. So definitely something to keep in mind as universities think about what modalities they may want to be offering future courses in. And finally, thinking about student flexibility, students show a slight preference for in-person over online and hybrid format. So that again echoes some of the other numbers we've looked at today. And students at UBC Vancouver, over half of respondents expressed the personal preference for face-to-face learning. So we see that in different universities across Canada as well. And now I'd like to hand it over to Mara to talk about the dashboard.
Thank you. I'm going to do to wrap up our presentation today, I'll do an overview of the design process and the key considerations, and then do a demo of the dashboard for you. So some of our key considerations were audience, accessibility, and longevity. So for audience, that primarily includes researchers, post-secondary staff, faculty, anyone who wants access to not only the research that our team has done on these reports, but the reports themselves, which are available on the dashboard. And so for that audience, it's people who need to locate and interpret reports efficiently. That meant an interface that had to support quick searching, clear navigation, and reliable access. And accessibility closely tied to that. I chose a platform that allows compliance with web accessibility standards and adjusts well to different devices to provide a reliable, intuitive user experience. Sometimes with more complicated, specialized, dashboard software, that user experience piece can be missing. So that was really a priority to balance that for this project. And finally, for longevity, this isn't a project that's going to be continually updated, but we still wanted the dashboard to be sustainable beyond the project timeline for as long as possible and remain stable and functional over time. So we chose a framework that minimizes maintenance needs and helps ensure the dashboard will stay usable and bug-free for as long as possible. So for a quick overview of the design and development process, we started with wireframes, mapping out the site's structure, how users would move between sections, access reports, and dive deeper into the research. And then next, I built an interactive prototype to test the layout and the user experience, ensure improvements are being made where they needed. And then lots of refining with feedback from our research team and from BC-CAT to improve the consistency, optimize accessibility, and make sure everything was working smoothly across devices. So to highlight a few key features before I dive into the demo, where you'll see these features, the report repository being one of the main features of the dashboard. So this serves as a searchable, centralized collection of all those publicly available post-secondary reports that we were able to collect related to course modality preferences. As well as the interactive thematic analysis. So that brings in some of those data viz that you've seen samples of in our presentation today. And also linking all those data visualizations link directly to the reports they're pulled from. So if you're interested in that insight and you want to dive deeper, that is possible. So let me bring up the dashboard now. All right, so here you see on BC Cat's website, and you can all find this. It's live currently. You can see the root here is Home Publications, Delivery Preferences Dashboard. So here we are, and the dashboard is organized into 5 main sections. You can see the standardization of terms, which Allie talked about, literature review, and then we're going to focus on, for the demo, the reports and thematic analysis. Open up the report repository here. This is where all 41 of those reports that we were able to find are housed. So they're organized by region, scope, organization, year, survey link, survey themes, and COVID context, which we define here at the time period we agreed on for that category. And so this repository, you can sort the columns if you want to look at, by year or say by region. It's also searchable. So if you're interested in, you want to see what reports are coming from BC or maybe specifically from the University of Victoria. And then when you find a survey, you want to look deeper into that report, you can just click the link here or click the link to look more at the institutions themselves. And that gives you access to all of those publicly available reports in one location. Next, I'll give a bit of a demo of the thematic analysis. So this is where Allie and Chelsea walked through some of these themes. So you can see they're all here organized under the 3 main themes. Each section collapses out and has a little bit of discussion of what we found around that theme, linking back to the reports that were particularly good examples for that theme. And then you can see the carousel of data visualizations here. And these, again, all link back, if you click on them, to the report they came from, if you want to dive deeper into some of those insights. And like I said, the dashboard is currently available on BC Cat's website, so please feel free to search it up and take a look at the results of our work there. So I'll just pass it back over to Chelsea to wrap up.
So thank you so much, Mara, for taking the time to walk us through the demo. So when we think about some reflections from this project, some that come to the final 3 thoughts that I just like to leave you with are, strategies for engagement. So it was challenging to get post-secondary staff to, it was challenging to get them to send us back reports, but we thought, email can be such a challenging way to do that. So it would be helpful if, we had more creative ways to engage and get that type of feedback. Secondly, the current post-secondary financial context really, as many institutions, UFV included, are looking at how we need to balance our budgets. How does choices of what modalities to or to not engage in with students, how is that going to be affected by financial decisions? And then finally, just thinking about the relevance of the institution. Universities are designed for education and to support students. So, keeping, of course, best practices of education in mind, but also considering what students want. I think we're, hopeful that universities will continue to produce change makers, will continue to create, insightful and academic conversations. And so as students are, increasingly questioning the value of a university education, I think it's important for universities to consider how they can, keep students engaged through their different modalities. So thank you so much for joining us today. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, and please explore the dashboard at your leisure.
All right, welcome back, everybody. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenters. We have Chelsea Klassen, lead researcher from UFV, Allie MacKay, student research assistant from UFV, and Mara Penner, graphic designer from UFV. Welcome, everybody. And Allie is very on point today with her background image, so thank you very much. I promise you we did not coordinate that, so excellent work there already. We've got a couple of questions that are in the chat already. So first question is from Ernest from TRU, who asks, what does more AI in education mean in terms of what does it look like? Who would like to take a stab at that one? Allie.
Hi, thank you for the question, Ernest. It's interesting because we don't really know where AI is going, but for the purpose of the survey, the Canadian Digital, I just want to make sure I get the right name here, The Canadian Digital Learning Research Association, which looks at digital learning and post-secondary education across Canada, their surveys were about will AI become a part of learning and how will it become a part and what will happen. And you can look, if you look on the dashboard, Mara gave the repository of surveys, their surveys are there as well as they upload new ones regularly. And it gives a good highlight on where AI is going in post-secondary.
Mara or Chelsea, do you want to add in on that as well?
I think Allie about covered it there. I would say that's definitely one of those things where if that's an insight that caught your eye, that's part of the reason I designed it like that, so that those data viz link directly back to that report. So while our scope may not have been to dive deeper into what exactly that meant in that survey report, making it accessible to you so that you can do that is part of what the dashboard is meant for.
There's a question from Carrie Chassels asking, were only undergraduate students surveyed as part of this work? Chelsea, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So, throughout the repository, you can take a look and see some of the titles of the reports identify if it was undergraduate, graduate, first year students, etc. So, we've tried to identify that in some of the titles of the report. So, there is a mix of both undergraduate and graduate students who were involved within the various surveys that were undertaken from the different universities. So, while UBC might have done more of a focus on first year or undergraduate students, we see that there was even a report from University of Calgary that looked specifically at graduate students. So there is a mix. I would say it is heavier definitely on the undergraduate side, but there is a bit of a mix.
I have a bit of a technical question here from Andrew Wilson from the Ontario Council on Articulation and Transfer. He's asking about whether there's the ability to integrate the dashboard with a tool like Power BI. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the dashboard was built, and I realized I didn't actually mention this in the presentation. It was built in WordPress. So not diving it for these purposes, really seeing the need to dive deep into some of that specialized software. When it comes to bridging, if you were like to integrate into Power BI, I can't say I would know exactly what that path would look like if you're pulling from the table. It was built in WordPress. So definitely possible to pull that information.
All right. Allie, just to circle back quickly to the report that you cited or the survey that you cited, do you by chance have the name of it at the ready? There's a question about it in the chat.
Yes, I do. The one that it should be linkable on the dashboard. So that data viz point that was in the presentation is in the dashboard as well. But it is called An Increasing Demand for Technology Use in Teaching and Learning. And it's a 2023 Pan-Canadian report on digital learning trends in Canadian post-secondary schools. And what I will do is I will post the dashboard link for that in the chat right now.
Thanks. And yeah, there was a posting in the chat earlier, but it does tend to get pushed down. So appreciate you doing that. There is a comment from Stephanie Boychuk, who loves the collection of terminology. It's a pain point for her that we still use different words for the same mode sometimes. And she's very pleased that she can now point to your page as a source of truth, I suppose, for the collection of terminology.
I agree. I agree.
Sorry.
It was a big point, and it was really interesting. There's studies in the dashboard as well, and it was interesting how they took all these terms and came together. And when you look at their study, you can see the agreement on each term. So some terms were only 73% post-secondaries were using them, and it's quite interesting.
I'm curious if there was anything that surprised you about some of the results and the work you did in researching student modalities.
I think if
Chelsea?
I can jump in for a second, yeah. And as Ali mentioned, I think the terminology was interesting. I think even the fact that, looking that our scope was around 2020 to 2025, it was difficult to find too much recent after 2024, 2025, or any references as AI's come up. Like we didn't see AI come up as much as maybe we would have thought it might have come up. I think, like I mentioned in the presentation, some of the challenges around getting this information from post-secondary institutions was a little bit surprising, but that was more about, I think, just our data collection methodology. Yeah, I think
obviously the scope of the different types of modalities too, like Allie said, with the terminology was also just, yeah, very, very mixed, very challenging to kind of sort through that. But I think Allie did a great job in the standardizations of terms and kind of using that pathway to clarify it for us.
Mara or Allie, was there anything that you found surprising about the work on student modalities?
Well, as the graphic designer on the project, wasn't as involved in doing the research, but obviously I built the dashboard. As I built the dashboard, I started to familiarize myself with it. And I think one of the things that surprised me was just like you see, as discussed, as we went through the thematic analysis, that a lot of students still prefer in-person sessions, but that hybrid was also very popular. And often the difference was it would be like 33% preferred in person and then 30% preferred hybrid. And so it was often not a massive difference in those preference rates.
And Allie, would you like to weigh in as well?
I think for me, it was kind of the available for technology for everyone, whether that was the student or the institution, and how that can influence the modalities. So the lack of high-speed internet in some communities, which we didn't talk about in the presentation, but just part of the data that's in the dashboard. Students not having proper computers, faculty being like not adapting to the online teaching. And I think that as we change is just kind of one of the issues that's going to never go away, that technology issue as we adapt and adapt and adapt.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today. There is a comment in the chat from Ernest just about having trouble accessing a survey link. We are aware that there is some challenge with some of the browsers. So if you are using a particular browser, you might want to try using Edge or one of the other ones. We are aware of that issue, but the dashboard is also available. All the surveys are available directly on the UFV website as well. So if you can't get it through BCCAT's dashboard, you can also go to the CHASI website. You should be able to find it there. We are right up at the timeline, so I do want to just thank our presenters, Allie, Chelsea, and Mara. Just as a reminder to everybody, we will be uploading the slide deck, as well as if you have any additional questions, we can certainly relay them to our presenters as well. But I just want to thank you, Mara, Chelsea, and Allie, for joining us today. I think this was a really exceptional session. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having us.
All right, we are going to take a 1-minute break while we get set up for the next presentation presented by my colleague, Elle Ting. So we will join you in the next session called For What It's Worth.